Do you wonder about past lives? Have you ever thought about where your soul has been, where it's going, or what lessons and memories have been gathered along the way? In this podcast, we will discuss past life memories, psychic phenomena, energy healing, and other metaphysical topics with experts and the average person to find out how we can heal through these experiences. So I invite you to join me on my journey. Welcome to the Regression Session. Then they're all of a sudden like, oh, right? Welcome back to the Regression Session. My name is Ian. Welcome to the Regression Session. To any new listeners, thanks for tuning in. We love you. This week we're going to be hearing from Jen Catlin. And Jen is a member of the education committee at the Michael Newton Institute. If you don't know what that is, well, have I got a homework assignment for you. Michael Newton is a huge pioneer in the life between life and past life regressions scene. He kind of helped to document in a very scientific way and catalog tons of different experiences and show correlations between the experiences of past life and life between life regressions. He has a book that's very famously recommended by all sorts of regressionists and regression therapists worldwide, and it is called Journey of Souls. So if you haven't read that book, definitely go check that out after this episode. I can include a link to that in the description. Back to Jen. Jen and I are going to be talking about kind of the views of the Michael Newton Institute. And, well, obviously it's her personal views, but she is a part of that. And my misconceptions that I had about the Michael Newton Institute, which I had made assumptions about in my own ignorance. So, yeah, I'm not perfect. And this is a very rare moment where we get to see how imperfect that I am, because I know that I always seem perfect. Anyway, thanks for tuning in once again. I know that the switch to bi-weekly uploads versus weekly uploads has been like leaving a hole in some of your guys' lives, and I'm sorry. I just have so much going on right now that the bi-weekly is working really well for me. So thanks for keeping up on the episodes. Thanks for the support. I'm really hoping to get back to the weekly episodes one of these days, but we'll just kind of have to see how it goes and play it by ear. Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast player so you don't miss any of my bi-weekly uploads. And don't forget to share the podcast around with literally everybody in the entire world. Thanks so much for listening once again. And without further ado, my conversation with Jen Catlin. Hey, Jen, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I've been really excited to talk to you. I've been looking forward to it. I was telling my wife, I was like, oh my God, someone that's like with the Newton Institute is coming on my show. I've been so excited. But before we get too much into it, if you don't mind, just for my audience sake, just telling me a little bit about your background, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, like maybe like your belief system growing up and how you transitioned into, like I said earlier, being a guru.
Sure. So growing up, I guess we'll start there. I was raised Catholic, actually, and I just never had, I had a lot of questions, I should say. It never made entire complete sense to me. And so I would often sit around and I was always interested in the deeper questions of life. I often wondered about why we're here. I mean, I remember at the youngest age I can remember looking up at the night sky, and I would just have tears streaming down my face sometimes because I would feel like, why why was I put here? Like I felt like I was almost left here or something. And there was an awareness looking back that there was something more, but I didn't know how to make sense of that. And so I learned to shut that down over time, especially moving into my adolescent years. But I was raised Catholic, and I would sometimes ask questions that didn't make logical sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that other people would go to hell who've not been exposed to this specific faith or something. And so I'd ask questions, often told I asked too many questions. I learned to just keep quiet. So I became more of an observer. But I remember I was just sharing this memory with somebody the other day. This is kind of a funny memory, but I remember being at a park across the street when I was in elementary school, and I would dig deep, 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 as far as I could dig, the deepest hole. And it was because I wanted to try to prove that there was no hell that existed down there. And so I would dig as deep as I could. And yeah, that lasted, I think, about a year or two. And then I moved on from that. But clearly, looking back, I've always had some level of awareness that there was more, but I didn't know what it was. And what I was being taught didn't make sense to me. It's not what I felt in my heart. And so moving into adolescence, I did shut that down a lot because I felt like I didn't want to stand out or be the weird one. And it was obvious to me that a lot of the world around me didn't necessarily think this way. And so it didn't feel safe for me to really be authentic in what I felt. And so I shut that down. And then moving into my later teens, I started having experiences that would just show up and be like little odd synchronicities that I thought, this is strange. And then leading into graduate school, I went to graduate school to become a school psychologist. And so I did practice as a school psychologist for a few years. And also at that time in graduate school, I was introduced to mindfulness. And that's when things really began to open for me. And even how I was introduced to that was a crazy synchronicity because I needed 1 credit to graduate, which was not at all common in my program. And I had a professor who just happened to be for the first time offering a credit in mindfulness. So I took that and then moving forward into my late 20s, early 30s, I began having a lot of what I now refer to as spiritually transformative experiences, or STEs. And those are basically the same thing happening, except for without the NDE physical trauma. And so I then had a really big one happen. And 2 weeks after that, I had a near-death experience. Looking back, I don't think there was any coincidence that it happened all so close together. But it was that led me into all of this and doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think a lot of us experience that whole, like, no, we don't do that here. You need to just be quiet and sit down and do as you're told, So
Yeah.
good on you for kind of breaking out of that. A lot of people follow that through all the way through into adulthood even, because it's really hard to break out of. And anybody listening to this podcast, I'm sure, is either there or on their way to breaking out of that. So I'm proud of all of you guys. So, when you're talking about an awareness, like, it's weird to talk, like, not weird, but it's kind of difficult to understand if you've never had that weird awareness. And I'm not sure if everybody has ever had it, like every single person out there is like, oh, I have this weird awareness. Like for me, the only thing I can think of about what you're talking about is, like, one time I was looking at myself in the mirror after being in the shower when I was like 14, and I looked into my own eyes for whatever reason for like 5 minutes, and then I like stood back in fear, and I was like, oh my God, that's not me. I was like, this isn't me. That was a weird experience for me. So
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more, if you don't mind, about like that awareness, because I feel like if people can kind of narrow down what we're talking about there, they can kind of zero in and start to focus on that, and it can be a really good
Mm,
foundation for kind of moving along in this journey or this path or whatever.
sure. The best way I can describe it is an intuition. A lot of people, I think, can relate to having a moment in life where they experienced gut intuition, just having a sense of something or a feeling of something. It's that. It's just the gut intuition I had was almost a homesickness. It felt like I had a longing for a home I didn't really know of, and that didn't make sense of me to me, but I felt it deeply in my heart and core. And I hear that from a lot of people that that there's a feeling like this isn't it, or a feeling of there being more or there being a home. Or I also see a lot that people are starting to have more and more spiritually transformative experiences. So metaphysical types of experiences or awarenesses or synchronicities that just catch your attention where you're like, oh, that's odd. How did that happen? Or why is this happening? And that's happening a lot with people right now. And they are things that are coming through that are, the best way I can put it is waking people up.
Yeah, I started referring to it as like spiritual activation.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know if I've been looking for a word to replace like uh, spiritual awakening for a long time.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess I just got to be going against the grain or whatever. But so this intuition, is that kind of tying into the STE or the spiritually transformative experience? Like, is there any way that specifically that you would quantify that, or like say like a minimum bar of, okay, this was an STE or this was just a coincidence? Does my question make sense?
It does. And you know, how I would have answered that even just a few years ago is probably different than how I would answer that now. Because my own understanding and interpretation and perception of consciousness and how consciousness works is constantly evolving. And so I feel like it's very different now. I mean, I could go deep down the rabbit hole, which I won't do, but um, I don't think that I would quantify it because I think everybody's experience is unique. And it, your truth is going to be different than my truth, than someone else's truth. And so I don't ever want my truth to be placed on somebody else. I think it's a matter of each finding our own voice. And part of that is listening to that inner voice that goes beyond just the logical mind. The logical conscious mind can help translate what's happening in what I refer to as the soul mind. And I do believe that is connected to intuition. And it's just a translation that's happening. But it's not coming from the logical mind, it's coming from a space beyond that. And I think everybody's experiences with that are going to be different.
Okay. I like that answer. I like that answer. So you said a couple of buzzwords there.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about, you said spiritual mind or spiritual consciousness, right?
Uh-huh. Soul mind.
So
Yeah.
let's break that down. Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that, because that's interesting. I haven't gone in, I haven't gone into like the more practical scientific side for a while. And you're a
Mm.
professional, right? Like you come from like a professional background.
Well, the background I come from, yeah, I mean, I have Western trained psychology, which is not at all in this realm. And then I have also the hypnosis, which is opening much more into this realm. And so it's been interesting for me because as much as I do have an intuitive voice and self, I also have just as much of a logical mind, and I definitely operate both ways. Um, so what I would say now is in for anybody who's listening to this, I just want you to be aware that this is my own personal opinion at this time, and it could change in another few years. And it's based on my experiences and things I've read. And I might not do the best way of describing this as some researchers would, but there are a lot of people who research this stuff at University of Virginia in their Division of Perceptual Studies. They do an amazing job researching past lives. They've researched many children who've had past life memories at very young ages. They do a lot of research around near-death experiences. My understanding is, and this is also from talking to some researchers, is that the mind is not local. And there are many researchers who believe that they're sitting on enough research to demonstrate that the mind is not local to our brain, that the mind is this vast realm of consciousness. And the brain is more like a computer system, is how I think of it, or like a radio station or something, and it's like this computer is tuning in to one specific frequency in the realm of consciousness. And that's where our soul mind exists. And so there is still some identity, I feel, in that is unique to each individual, but it's also dependent on the experiences of the soul in that realm. And the experiences of the soul also are related to what our human experiences are as well in the physical realm. So there is a lot of connection there.
Yeah,
I don't know if that answered your question very well.
No, it totally did. It totally did.
Okay,
I love,
good.
that's almost like a cookie cutter version of my answer. What my answer is it comes down to a concept called non-local consciousness, and this was the first thing that kind of got me away from like atheism. Basically, is like the research shows that your brain works more of like a receptor or a receiver versus being the seat for your mind, right?
Absolutely.
And there's so many things that can prove this too. It's just insane. So I'll have to do like an episode on like all that stuff. One specific thing is if anybody, I don't have the study offhand. I'll try to find it and include it in the show notes. But there's a phenomenon where humans can tell if they're being stared at. Like even through a camera, they can tell when they're actually being stared at or viewed. And how does that work? My next question is like, and this might be a kind of like a more personal question.
Sure.
I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of materialism in regards to like consciousness.
Sure.
So I took a psychology course from Yale, and the very first thing that they went into, they just started preaching materialism, and they're like, because your mind, your personality can change when your brain gets damaged, that means that when your brain dies, you die. And that was like the very first thing that they dove right into. So what's your thoughts on that specifically? Do you condemn that or do you find it accurate, or what do you think?
I don't personally believe it myself. I mean, I'm fine with if others I believe that, and that is, what they find. But I don't believe that. I do see our minds as like a computer. And to me, it's like if the computer is not working, it's because the infrastructure is not able to tune in to the resonance or the frequency or the waves or whatever it's tuning into in that realm of consciousness, because there's damage there. Just like if a radio were damaged, it wouldn't be able to receive what's coming through in a particular station in those sound waves, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I love it. It's really good to come back, I think, to this foundation sometimes, especially for me, because I've been off in like, hey, we're gonna channel our spirit guides right now, kind of a land. So I love coming back. Thank you so much for like talking about this with me. So you are affiliated with the Newton Institute.
Correct. Yes, I'm on the education committee for the Newton Institute that trains other hypnosis practitioners who want to train in life between lives hypnosis.
Is it exclusively life between lives?
For the Newton Institute, yes.
Okay. Yes, and if for anybody who is unfamiliar with the Newton Institute or Dr. Michael Newton, check out his book Journey of Souls. It's a really good place to start, especially if you're more scientifically minded, like
Yeah.
me. He did a ton of research about it and developed a whole entire system about it and everything, and it's just great. So, did
He
you?
mapped out, I mean, he really did give an amazing map of the spirit realm. And one thing I'll say about that is I've worked with some people who've had near-death experiences, and there are people who I've know who've had near-death experiences where there is verified evidence that they could not have known or gained had they not had awareness outside of their body. And I'm talking about in other parts of the hospital or rooms that were later verified with people, with doctors and other people. And some of these individuals were searching for years for something to help them understand what happened, because some of them had very different faith beliefs than what they experienced. And so they didn't know how to make sense of that. And when they came across Michael Newton's work, they said, wow, this is the first thing that actually describes what I experienced. And so it's really cool.
It is cool, and it's what got me into this and considering it seriously.
Yeah, me
Honestly,
too.
but before I was just like, oh, that's neat, right? Like, but I'm still an atheist,
Yeah.
and then I'm not gonna change that. And then I was like, wait a minute, this guy has a process, and he laid it out, and all these people are saying the same thing. And so if you don't mind, just for as an insider perspective,
hmm
talking about the methodology, because I think that
hmm
people, I've had a couple people who are actually looking into becoming regression practitioners, and I think that they would find this very helpful to just kind of see what different methodologies are out there.
Yeah, so I actually teach a hypnosis or hypnotherapy training program that's an affiliate of the Newton Institute, meaning it gives practitioners everything they need to have before being able to apply to the Newton Institute, because the Newton Institute does get a lot of applications and they don't take all those people into training. There are specific things that we're looking for in order for people to have before they can apply. And there can be quite some time too between becoming certified versus for when a person can apply. That time is shortened with affiliate trainings, but we teach in the same methodology. So what that means is, because there are many ways to access the spirit realm or your soul self, but I love this method because it's so powerful. It takes people back through their current life into childhood. Typically we are guiding people to happy or positive, supportive moments in childhood because they're not there to work specifically on any trauma. And so we don't want to spend the whole session doing that. However, if something other than that comes up, there's always a reason for it. I trust that what is going to show up for a person is showing up for a reason. And so there's ways to work with that. That said, we go back from childhood into the womb and do a womb regression. And this is such a powerful space because it's the first place where a person is able to access their soul's consciousness and their human consciousness. You're starting as a facilitator to work with multiple, not personalities, but different aspects of consciousness. And there's different timelines that can even be explored in the womb, depending on what's coming through for a person. And then there can be overlap even with mom's consciousness. So sometimes, for example, somebody might have experienced anxiety in their entire life. And only until they get to the womb do they realize, oh my goodness, this isn't even mine. It came from mom. And so that can be surprising for some people. And this is coming through on their own. As a facilitator, we want to be extremely client centered and asking open ended questions. So we're not leading people into having some kind of insight that's not coming from them.
See, that's what I was gonna poke at you about,
Uh,
because I am a huge supporter of
Yeah.
not leading, and there are some
Me too.
hypnotists out there that do it. They lead you along,
Mm-hmm.
and you know the gripe that I have with the Newton Institute. Okay, the like specifically the only gripe is I worked with someone who I spoke with someone. I don't think they actually came on my show, but I spoke with them. They trained with the Newton Institute, and then the way that they made it sound, and this could be in just them. A slip of the tongue or whatever. But the way they made it sound is it's like, okay, now we're going to go back to a memory in your childhood, right? So we're on track. Okay, now we're going to go back to the womb. Okay, great. All right, now we're going to go back to your past life. And then they go through the past life. And then once they get to the past life, they move into after you die in that life. And then you go in, in between life. And they're like, okay, now we're going to go through the spirit light bath or whatever, and now we're gonna go talk to the council of elders, and now we're gonna go to the planning session or the planning chamber or whatever. And so that's the gripe that I would say, like, if that's how it's done based off of that one person's presentation of it, I'm like, yeah, no, I would disagree with that. But is that not how it's done then?
That's not how I do it. So, and what I will say too is sessions now are very different than when even Michael Newton was doing his research. He began his research back in the 60s. Human consciousness has evolved so much since then, and people are able to access more quickly, and they're able to connect in deeper ways. And leading is absolutely not necessary, because people are, once you're able to get individuals into the flow of just allowing things to show up to them, the session takes a life of its own. Now, I do guide people to the womb, to a past life, but do people always go to a past life? No. There are plenty of people who skip over and will connect to the spirit realm, and I follow them and go. And it's just whatever's showing up for them, I want to meet them there. And all I want to do is ask questions around, tell me more, what's happening? Tell me more about this. And what significance does this have for you and your human life today? And questions like that, rather than specifically saying where they need to go. Sessions have, I would say, shifted quite a bit from when Michael Newton was doing his research. And at that time, I think the way human consciousness was processing this was in a more linear fashion. But we are finding in the Newton Institute, and it's not just me, that things have evolved significantly. And so our intention is to teach people how to be open-ended. And we focus on that hard in our training. I teach with a colleague of mine, Nora Young, and we focus so much on how to be client-centered and ask open-ended questions, so we're not leading. I still do follow the methodology. Once they get to the spirit realm, though, it becomes even more open, like where they go, they go. I'm not saying, hey, you go here and now go here and go here. It takes a life of its own.
Hey everyone, I'm interrupting the episode to tell you all about today's sponsor, Shape. Have you ever wanted to try your hand at astral projection but just don't know where to start? Lucid dreaming can often be the first step to astral projection. Lucid dreaming is the art of awakening within your dream world. And once you become conscious in your dreams, you can do anything. You can fly, practice new skills, overcome fears, and go deep into the inner layers of the mind. With lucid dreaming, anything is possible, and best of all, anyone can learn to lucid dream. All it takes is commitment and the right technique. The Shape app makes learning to lucid dream considerably easier. You'll start by writing down your dreams in a dream journal, then you'll learn to identify dream signs, perform reality checks, and prime your mind for becoming lucid as you go to bed. Shape is packed with useful audio guides, personal statistics, dream insights, and other practical tools like the dream journal and Am I Dreaming reminders. This is the ultimate lucid dreaming coach and one of the fastest, most effective ways to awaken in the dream world, with many people having a lucid dream the very first night that they download Shape. So using the link in the description, you can save up to 20% on Shape's annual plan. So if you want to learn to lucid dream, check out the link in the description to start learning today. Now back to the episode. Yeah, that's great. So thank you for clearing that up, because that's like I was like, whenever somebody is asking me about the Newton Institute, I'm always like, yeah, I have one gripe. That's one gripe, and it's the linear structure of it. And
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense to a certain point, because back in the 60s, nobody was really talking about this stuff. It was maybe like Michael Newton, Ian Stevenson,
Yeah.
that there's one other guy that I forget his name, and then maybe like Dolores Cannon, right? So those are there's like four main people that were digging into this. So I guess it makes sense that it would evolve if we're looking at like the open-mindedness of people and not needing that linear structure. But at the same time, I have done a session with someone who I've seen the proof of it, where they're like, oh, I'm looking at like this weird blueprint thing, and it's got like all these plot points marked out on my life. And I'm pretty sure Michael Newton talked about that at some point.
Well, sure. I mean, when I was back doing my practice case studies years ago with people who had never heard of Michael Newton, sometimes my jaw would drop because there would be things that they would describe that Michael Newton found in his research. And it's always like a really neat thing to find. And we're also discovering another layer of information that he didn't find then, because human consciousness is ready for that, to explore even more. And I think when he did his research, he mapped out, like, based on what people were telling him, I go here, and then I go here, and then I go here. And so he kind of mapped it out where it was sort of linear based on what people were telling him. But it doesn't mean that when an individual has their own session now, that they have to be guided to go in that linear way.
That's true. And it's not like, and he even says in his book, for anybody listening to this, that it's not like every single session was like a linear cut and dry, like this happens and then this happens every single time.
Right.
It's different. So
yeah.
That's great. Thanks for answering that for me. The
You're
next
welcome.
thing that I have for you is, have you only ever worked with like past life regression and life between life regression through the Newton Institute, or did you get your start somewhere else?
Nope, that's where I started. So when I actually began hypnosis training, I began training with Bryn Blankenship, and Bryn was affiliated with the Newton Institute at the time. And so many people who were in the training, I think almost all of the people were there because they had a goal of getting to the Newton Institute. Just like when people take mine and Nora's training now, many of them have a goal to want to train in life between lives. And so they're getting this preliminary work. We take them all the way through womb and past life regression. It's just that the Newton Institute adds on the spirit realm component. We do a little bit of that in our training, like an intro to the spirit realm. But I was in the training, and I think I was the only one who had no idea who Michael Newton was. I heard of Brian Weiss because of my experience that I was having. Somebody handed me a book by Brian Weiss and said, I want you to read this. And that's what guided me into exploring this more. But then I found out about Michael Newton after I had some more experiences happening while I was in training. I really thought I was losing it. And then I found out who Michael Newton was. And after I read things that were in his book that were things I was experiencing, it was very validating for me because I didn't know what was going on. And then here is this person who's done all this research and saying what he's found with all of these other people from different faith backgrounds. And so that's what led me into exploring more. And so I ended up going on to train with the Newton Institute. And that's been the path that I've been on. I mean, I've been exposed to other things, and I've been actually going through, I'm almost done the Beyond Quantum Healing method online and learning, there's many ways to connect. I personally prefer in a past life regression session to take people through the Newton Institute methodology because there is so much that can process and happen when going through childhood. Because a lot of times there are many of us, and I admit to having been one of these people, and I still have to check myself on it sometimes, to wanting to kind of bypass all this human stuff and like, let's just go into the spiritual stuff. But we're humans here too, and we've got a lot of challenges. And so sometimes there's things that we need to process through, emotions that we carry in from our childhood. And so what I find helpful is that this methodology allows you to go through those areas and bring some relief to past circumstances that may have been very difficult.
I, I love that what you said at the last part there about like basically it comes down to like healing yourself in this life,
Yes.
versus just trying to explore for exploring's sake. And there's definitely valid reasons to explore for exploring's sake, but in my experience, you're going to have a much more difficult time exploring a past life if you haven't spent time processing through your emotions and trauma from this life. And just as a quick note, that book by Brian Weiss was Many Lives, Many Masters, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I went on
figured
to
it
read
was.
others, but that was the one that brought me into it. Yeah.
That's where a lot of people I feel like get their start. They're like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
Brian Weiss," and he's great, but he popularized it a lot, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, check out that for anybody listening. Many Lives, Many Masters, and Journey of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton. And now to bring it back to not quantum healing. It's the same. It's basically the same thing. Beyond quantum healing.
Hmm.
So you're working with that now, huh?
Yeah. So it's a self-paced course, and I've been just going through it because I consider myself a lifelong learner, and I just love learning all different methodologies, different things that are going to work for different people. Sometimes I've had people who come through and have a past life regression and a life between lives session, and then maybe they want to connect, you know, to exploring some spiritual aspect of something, but not needing necessarily the whole process. And so it's a really great way to have some flexibility and ways to bring people in. So I love that.
Have you ever spoken to the founder of Beyond Quantum Healing, Candace Craw Goldman?
Just through email. And it's been more around logistics, like if I have trouble logging in or something, but she sounds super sweet.
Yeah. Did you know? I'm sure
Oh,
you
we're
know this. So
Facebook friends, but we haven't met in person.
the- she's so cool. I had her on my show, and
Yeah.
she like worked directly with Dolores Cannon,
Yeah.
and Dolores Cannon just blows my mind. But
Hmm.
there's so many different techniques. So
Yeah.
so you kind of have like Beyond Quantum Healing and QHHT or Quantum Healing Hypnosis for anybody out there who is like either considering getting a regression done or having spiritual hypnosis, or someone who's on the verge of learning how to facilitate. And feel free to cut in and cut me off and correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's, in my mind, and this is just for my audience sake, right?
Hmm.
In my mind, there's basically like two different forms of what we're talking about, this spiritual hypnosis stuff. There's the very scientific, I don't want to say linear anymore now that you explained to me, but scientifically based, process driven hypnosis through the Newton Institute, kind of that side of things. And then there's like the QHHT, Beyond Quantum Healing side of things. It's like, okay, basically anything goes. You could show up on an alien planet and the practitioner will be like, "Oh, yeah, that's fine. So what's going on now?" Like
That's how it is with LBLs too, with Life Between Lives. We are working with the exact same realm. And so again, what Michael Newton found, it's different than how, at least how I facilitate and how I know several others in the Newton Institute facilitate. Actually, I've been having more often than not, that's where sessions are going as soon as they get to the spirit realm. Again, I find the process though of going through childhood, womb, and then either from womb to the spirit realm or to a past life and then to spirit realm to be more and more often people are having a past life regression before a life between lives session. So oftentimes in the life between lives, they're skipping over the past life and just going straight to the spirit realm because they're already primed. That's happening very frequently. But it's going to incarnations and other worlds. And what I always, I mean, truly anything goes. Like that's where the session just takes a life of its own now. It's not necessarily what they used to look like. And we have a lot of agreement throughout the Newton Institute. Other practitioners are having this happen as well. What I always want to know as a facilitator is how is what is coming through for you, whatever it is that's showing up for you, how is that relevant in your life today as a human being? What is significant about this, and how can it help you in your life? Or what do you need to bring forward or release? Or, there's so many things that can be explored, but bringing it back to why they're here now and why this is important now is something I personally want to know, because they're going to leave this session and then what?
Right. It's all about the client. It's all about healing.
Yeah.
Right. And I always say this, I swear to God, one day I'm going to make t-shirts. If it doesn't matter if it's real, if it's like, if it's real or not, it's a real experience, Yeah. So it doesn't matter if they actually are, I don't know, like a weird rock alien on another planet or whatever they see.
Yep.
As long as they get something out of it. And it doesn't even always make sense to the practitioner. Like sometimes I've had people that are just like, oh, and I'm like, what? And they just go, no, I figured it out. And you're like, okay, you want to talk about it? No, I'm good. Let's keep going.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, okay. So it's very interesting to me, moving kind of into like this weird alien thing, that in Michael Newton's books, at least in Journey of Souls, most of the lifetimes that he was visiting were human.
Uh-huh.
And so
not so much the case anymore.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and that's a common thread across the board, I think, because I talk to a lot of regression practitioners or spiritual hypnotists, and it's becoming more and more common. And do you have like a hypothesis or a theory as to why?
Yeah. Well, and I won't go deep into it, but I will say this is what brought me into exploring the Newton Institute. Is I had an experience in hypnosis that I hadn't even been trained in past life regression yet. I hadn't been trained in any spiritual hypnosis yet. I didn't even know it was possible because I didn't know who Michael Newton was. And I had an experience happen that blew my entire worldview inside out, upside down. I was shaking for weeks after because my nervous system didn't know how to process, because the experience, like you said, was so emotional and real, and it had nothing to do with what I was in session about. I didn't even know that I was flipping my awareness going back and forth the way I was, but it's what brought me into this. And based on my personal experience and working with others, what I feel may be happening is that there are a lot of traveler souls, or hybrid souls, as Michael Newton would call them, incarnating more and more frequently to support various things to support humanity, to support the evolution of consciousness. Many, many different reasons of support. This is the first time I'm speaking about this. I am in talks to speak about this with the research team at the Newton Institute, because they continue research. I had a session with somebody, and this person has given me full permission to share this and feels it's very important to share this. And I don't want to misspeak because I don't have it right in front of me. I wasn't planning on talking about this today. I have it all written out, but in this person's session, what was experienced was information around coming in to even help shift some of the, I hope I'm explaining this correctly, some of the genetics in the human body, because as you know, trauma is passed, you might know, through epigenetics, right? So if somebody experiences trauma generations ago, several generations later, that individual who's not experienced the same trauma they can have the same sort of emotional after effects of that trauma.
A common name for that, for anyone listening, is generational trauma.
Yeah,
If you've heard of generational trauma, that's what you're talking about, right?
absolutely. But the person doesn't even have to know it
Right.
existed. Yeah,
Right.
it could have been several generations ago. And there's things that we do as well in the hypnotic space to help process through that and release that. But so this person described that the traveler souls that she's a part of come in to help support and shift what is happening with the genetics that are being passed down because humanity on a physical level is suffering from this after so long. And so just by bringing this vibrational frequency in, it helps to shift that for future generations. And so it blew me away. I mean, we went deep in the session into specifics around that, and it was very, very deep and specific, and I think important information.
Yes. So we're getting more into like the metaphysical side of this stuff, and if we're gonna talk about like the more grounding scientific process
Hmm.
based side of things, we would be doing a disservice to anybody listening to this if we didn't talk about the more metaphysical side of things. So
And I think both are important.
they are.
I would not be here if um, the more research based evidence was not there because I'm somebody who has such a strong logical analytical mind and I did come from a Western trained psychology background that I needed at that time. I don't so much anymore, but I really needed that verification and evidence. And so I think that is really important to help bring more and more people the awareness of this. But I'm also like I could fly way out there into the metaphysical.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. My show is definitely, I really try to stay very practical,
Yeah.
kind of right in the middle, because I feel like a lot of people that are coming to my show are looking, are kind of like more on the beginning side of things. And they're like,
Yeah.
I really would like to hear someone with a practical approach. However, so I can do this thing nowadays, and I haven't talked about this much on my show because I question my own sanity in doing this.
Hmm.
But I can do this thing where I can kind of enter into a trance and I'll just start talking about stuff.
Yeah.
Or like whatever people ask me, I'll come up with these answers. And some of the answers are like crazy. But one of the things that someone asked me at one point was about this exact same thing, like this frequency shift is what I referred to it as in this trance. And it's talking about how, and Dolores Cannon, this was before I even really read much Dolores Cannon, and this is kind of validating for me because I was talking about how people are coming in who haven't really either haven't really spent much time on Earth before or have never been on Earth before, and they're
Hmm.
coming in to shift the energies and kind of like
Yeah.
prime mankind for a shift of some kind. And that's what I was talking about. And then I
Yes.
read it in Dolores Cannon's books and it kind of blew my mind and I was like, whoa, okay, that was weird. But yeah, so I can do that and it's very interesting the things that I'll come up with. And I'll even say things that I don't even personally necessarily believe on a conscious level.
Right.
And then I'll come out of it and I'll be like, why did I say that? That's weird.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
weird
because
answer.
you're accessing something that exists beyond the conscious, the filter of the conscious logical mind.
Right. Like anybody who's listened to this show for a long time, they'll know that I don't really refer to God really. Like
Hmm.
I haven't really believed in like a concept of like a traditional God for a while now, but one thing that I said under this state was that individuality is God's will. And so I have no idea why I would say that unless it was coming from someone else because I don't necessarily believe in God. And I was like, individuality is God's will. Because
Mm.
someone asked me what happens after you die, and I kind of went into that a little bit. I don't even remember what I say most of the time. So
Yeah.
there is like this weird metaphysical side. And when you were talking about, just so you know, like another weird thing, my audience is gonna think I'm crazy. I'm crazy too. But when you're
I've been
talking
through all
about
this.
when you were talking about the energy shift and the generational trauma, I got this weird, like, it felt like someone was like pulling the hair on the back of my scalp.
Yeah.
That was weird, by the
Well,
way.
and that's the thing. I mean, energy, we're all energy, even in physicality, it's all energy. We're just perceiving separateness and we're perceiving objects because light is bouncing off of these energies, and energy can express through the physical body too. And so sometimes people feel things, even in sessions. Sometimes people will see things, but it's not, so, the books describe it and make people think that everybody's experiences are going to be seen. And that's not the case. There are plenty of people, and I've had different experiences myself, who feel their entire session, or it's that inner knowing or gut intuition, or you'll feel some like a sensation in the body, or like you just felt with your head. Sometimes people will get chills. They're just like little awarenesses where it's like this other part of you saying, hey, pay attention to this.
Yeah, exactly. With me, I have aphantasia. I don't know if you're familiar
Ah,
with
yes.
that.
Yes.
But when I enter these trances, or if I do a hypnosis, or I do a past life regression or whatever, I don't see anything and I don't hear
Right.
anything
Mm-hmm.
at all. I just say stuff, and it's very difficult for me because I am a very scientific minded person. It's difficult for me to not question my sanity.
Yeah.
But you're right. I've had people who we've had to work on some anxiety issues with just hypnosis, right? There was
Mm-hmm.
no, like, the goal wasn't to do a past life or anything like that. It was simply to
Right.
just remove anxiety, and they'll feel physically, like, I had a lady feel like she was choking because we were
Yes.
moving the anxiety up and out to, like,
Yes.
almost like the top of your head. And she was like, I feel like I'm choking. And I'm like, that's good. That's a good thing. It means it's moving up. And she's like, oh, it's in my mouth now. That's weird. And I was like, yeah, keep moving it up.
Yeah.
And so people will feel random things. And anybody who doesn't believe that energy expresses itself in your body, I'll just ask you this question. What's like the most common thing people want to get a massage for? It's your
Mm-hmm.
shoulders, right? Like your neck and
Mm-hmm.
your shoulders. There's a huge amount of energy that's stored up there and it makes you tense. And so that's just
Yep.
like one example.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we call feelings, because it's energy that can be felt in the body. There's a different feeling anxiety has than peace or happiness has, and it's all energy.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you went into the shift thing. I wish, like, I want to talk more about that.
There's so much we could talk about. We could probably spend days.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll have to have you back on after you talk with the research department and solidify everything. We'll have to have you come back on and talk about that
Yeah,
a
that'd
little
be
more.
fun.
Well, we've been talking for a little while here, and what I usually like to do for people is I like to say, hey, if people wanted to, like, get in touch with you to get a session from you, I don't know if you offer personal sessions, or if they wanted to look into your course, your website, any social medias that you have. Do you want to just plug yourself real quick?
Sure. So I'm not sure exactly when people are listening to this. I'm in the middle of a transition myself. Right now, my website is Jennifer Catlin, CATLIN.com. However, that probably by about September 1st, so in about a couple of weeks, is going to shift to jencatlin.com. And I've just recently, so I have been in practice seeing a lot of one-on-ones, and it's become too much because there's only one of me. And so I am transitioning to develop some online courses that people can take, that are self-paced. I actually just did one on codependency and people pleasing because that was something I had struggled with a lot in my life and moved through. And I also developed a past life regression preparation kit, or for any type of spiritual hypnosis session that can help people prepare, and get everything they need to know prior to going into that session. So that will all be available on jencatlin.com as of September 1st, 2022.
Perfect. And links to that can be found in the description. I know that some of you guys don't ever look at that. I'm calling you out right now. I've had people message me and say, hey, what's that website? And I'm like, hey, check the description. So check the description for links to that. And Jen, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
And say, do you have a message, a final word, or anything like that you would like to leave from my audience?
Oh, well, I think something that's important for all of us is, for one, if you are somebody who's just coming into this, I get where you're at. And I know, Ian, you get where they're at, because I've been there too. And I have an extremely logical mind. And so it's okay to question. I think it's a healthy thing to question and give that intuitive part of you, that sense of inner knowing, the thing that's nudging you to explore more, just offering that a voice too, to be heard and explored. And you get to do it your way. You get to feel safe and comfortable about it and ease your way in, and trust that what you're being guided to is, there's something there for you.
Well, thank you very much for that message, Jen. And thank you very much for coming on to my show. I had such a nice time talking about this stuff with you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
That's it for today's episode. I would like to thank Jen for coming onto the show and clearing up some of my misconceptions that I had about the Newton Institute. Kind of embarrassing and humbling. It's important to check yourself every once in a while, people. And I would like to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to check out jencatlin.com or jennifercatlin.com. I'm sure they probably go to the same place now. Don't forget to check out Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. And don't forget to share the podcast around with everybody that you know in the entire world so that we can grow the community. I'm really looking to get my name out there a little bit more so that I can assist as many people as possible through their journey. So if you want to come on the show and share your experience, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.
I could pick any superpower. If there were anything, I think it would be being able to show people who they really are beyond this.
But that's like a we can already do that though.
We can, but not everybody is aware of that.
but also, and I always do this to people, I always point out like the practicality. So like if you walked up to somebody who wasn't ready for it and you like, I don't know how you'd activate it, like smack them on the forehead or something and you're like, you are healed or whatever. Then they're all of a sudden like, oh, right?
Yeah, that could be a bit jarring, I suppose.
And they'd be like, why? You know.